Western opportunism in its truest form. As long as free trade worked for all of you, you said free trade, globalization. Now that Asian countries, now that the global South is catching up, you say this is not fair, there are too many tariffs and so on. Is this what it's all about?
嗨，欢迎大家来到果果的新闻频道。本期重要看点：当印度代表在达沃斯论坛上直接质问，这是不是西方最真实的机会主义？当自由贸易对你们有利时，你们高喊全球化；现在亚洲国家赶上来了，你们就说这不公平。现场陷入了令人窒息的沉默。更尴尬的是，当主持人追问谁还是美国的盟友时，美国大使竟然说这个问题应该由他们来回答。想象一下，世界最强大国家的代表在全球精英面前说不清楚谁是自己的盟友。这场对话揭开了一个残酷的真相：中国已经控制了稀土、医药原料等西方离不开的命脉。澳大利亚的前官员现身说法，因为要求调查疫情，中国一夜之间就冻结了他们200亿美元的出口。替补供应链不是假设，是生死攸关的现实。但问题来了，美国能把所有产业链搬回国内吗？答案是不能，代价太高昂。那欧洲的绿色能源政策呢？美方毫不客气地说，这只会让中国更强大啊！这不是普通的贸易争端，这是关于未来世界秩序由谁来定义的终极博弈。今天我们就来拆解这场没有硝烟的新冷战，请看前方发来的报道。
The first Trump administration also triggered a trade war with China, and that shaved billions from the global economy, and the likes of Bloomberg and economists declared it a failure. What makes you so confident that this time it will be different?
Well, I think it's actually China's at a trade war with us, not us with China. So, China's decoupling. China has their 100-year marathon that ends in 2049. And China wrote their paper, Made in China 2025. Well, here we are in 2025, and they've pretty much fulfilled most of their goals of the technology, the high-level manufacturing, the internal consumption, and then the export to the rest of the world. But I look at what China's threatened against the West and the US specifically, like the pharmaceutical precursors that they provide to most of the world, like although India is doing some of those, like the rare earth minerals that they mostly control around the world, which we all need for our cell phones and our defense equipment. And then I look at the energy policy of most of our allies, but especially Europe, rich countries in the EU, how they're in the net zero, I would call it a religion of climate change that is an anti-human deindustrialization agenda. And I hope that Europe will wake up and understand that the green energy that they're promoting actually enriches China and hands them the control of their economy and the home heating and all the uses that they need energy for, transportation, and that they will embrace the basic bedrock of energy, which is oil and gas, which is coal, clean coal, nuclear, and not be afraid of nuclear, which is completely green. And I hope that Europe will pivot and work with Trump to increase their economies and get reliable, cheap energy available to all of their citizens and their industrial base so that the deindustrialization happening among the engine of Europe will end and we will share a better future together. That's what I hope that you will work with Trump.
Alicia,
thanks for the invitation as a European, but shale gas is not very cheap, so certainly not from the US. But let me go back to what Trump really wants. I'm sure you know better than me, but if I hear correctly, Trump wants reindustrialization. And that's fine. But the question I have is, can the US reshore everything it needs? I hope the answer is no. I hope, because, if it were yes, I don't think American consumers would be happy about what it means to reshore everything back to the US. So the question is, let's call it supplementary supply chains, yeah? Supplementary. We don't need to really, make China disappear, I hope. Yeah, it's there. And there's a lot of countries trading with China. So imagine we want to create a supplementary supply chain, just in case supply chain. Just in case something happens and we can't trade with China. Just in case China retaliates. Just in case we create a supplementary supply chain.
China does retaliate.
There's no just in case about this.
Okay. I've been here with you.
China boycotted $20 billion worth of Australian exports despite a free trade deal that I negotiated with China because it wanted to punish us for the temerity of calling for a full, transparent international investigation into the virus. So
they did the same thing to Norway.
China tried to corner the rare earths market, and then Japan, to its great credit, helped to keep the one Australian competitor to China in rare earths. Japan helped to keep that going a decade ago after China had banned Japan from getting any rare earths.
Tony, so I've been here, same panel with you 2 years ago, and I was making those arguments. So you don't need to convince me. I agree, but that's actually not the point now. The point is that we need a supplementary supply chain, that we're heavily dependent on China, and that the way to do it is not to fight each other as we are doing now. This is the point.
We're not fighting with anybody.
Let me let me get in Jane Hall-Lute here. I'm no fan of China, but let me ask you this. Would it be fair to say that we are witnessing Western opportunism in its truest form? As long as free trade worked for all of you, you said free trade globalization. Now that Asian countries, now that the global South is catching up, you say this is not fair, there are too many tariffs and so on. Is this what it's all about?
Okay, and I thought I was just going to alienate everybody on this panel, but I may alienate everyone in this room. A, there's no such thing as clean coal. B, I'm still reacting. I guess I'm trying to process Elisa's comment that, the rest of the world, wishes it had USA's problems. The United States wishes the rest of the world would share its burdens that it's been carrying for the past decades. And so the point is, I think, is this just us awakening to the fact that people are catching up, that global economies, powerful economies, important economies, vital economies like the economy of India are making the kind of progress that they had? Do you think we resent that? That was the whole point. It was the whole point. The United States wants capable partners around the world, not client states, okay, not dependencies. We want capable partners. And that includes partners in the global South. And so, no, I don't just think this is all about, keeping people down. This is really about lifting people up. Look, the United States has an interest in 4 things at this moment in its history. It has an interest in a safe and secure homeland. We all do, wherever we live. It has an interest in a dynamic economic engine that can generate new wealth. That's a high bar. By the way, we are doing better than anybody else. We're doing pretty well, but we know we could be doing so much better, and there are parts of our economy that are not. The third thing we need are strong friends and allies who are willing to be capable partners to the United States. And the fourth thing we need is predictable relations with others.
Who is an ally of the U.S. today?
But it's a technical term. There are a lot, and there are many in this room. And so you may not like what the United States is doing right now. Does that mean you're not our allies? That's not a question for us.
No. If the U.S. is going to be imposing tariffs on everyone, if you're going to question what NATO is doing and whether NATO should be paying its bills, there are conversations that leaders have in closed rooms, and then there are conversations which also sound like threats. So I want to understand, who is a U.S. ally in this day and age?
So, I think I answered the question. And if you're asking about NATO, it was my husband who was the ambassador to NATO. So you've got the wrong loot.
Okay, let me ask you this, Tony Abbott. Where does this leave multilateral organizations like, for instance, the World Trade Organization? What does the WTO do now? Now that countries are imposing tariffs, and then some other countries are going to the WTO complaining about those tariffs. do they have any relevance, or are they going to fade into oblivion?
Well, there's no doubt that considered in isolation, free trade adds to wealth. But that's not all it does. It changes the pecking order and it can cause a whole lot of difficult and painful adjustments for different sections of different countries. And this is where I think we've got to appreciate that maximising wealth is not the only objective. It's a very important objective, but it's not the only objective. And while personally I don't particularly like it when the American president talks about turning Canada into the 51st state and taking back Greenland, I can see what he's trying to do here. He is trying to let the rest of the world know that America has been paying a high price and a heavy burden to be the world's policeman, and it wants other countries to step up. And frankly, other countries should step up. I mean, India, for instance, should be a leader of the free world. It really should be. I mean, the great thing about India is that for 7 decades, often under enormous difficulties, India has preserved the rule of law and democracy, an absolutely admirable achievement. So why shouldn't India be, with the United States, a leader of the free world, as opposed to getting in with bad company at BRICS? I mean, why should India not step up and be a leading democracy as opposed to a junior partner to Russia and China?
India is a leading democracy, and India is a member of the BRICS.
Of course it is, but India could do so much more. For instance, I heard a suggestion at one of the sessions this morning that India might provide peacekeeping troops for Ukraine. That's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. If India is prepared to do more of that, well, I think that it would be making a wonderful contribution. It would be doing the sort of thing that America has been doing for 7 decades and hasn't received, I think, suitable recognition.
India provides peacekeeping forces to a lot of countries that the Western press and the Western powers don't often talk about, and it is under the UN framework, as I'm sure you're aware, as against the Americans who, with their burden, end up entering Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere. But
Iraq. Now, I mean, you're not going to defend the Taliban, surely. I mean, the Taliban was a monstrous regime, yes. An absolutely monstrous regime.
They're back. They're worse than before.
And look, it was to America's credit that the Taliban were gone, and frankly.
精彩视频看完了，视频里的对话围绕川普政府的贸易政策展开。美方代表将中美贸易归咎于中国，声称中国通过100年马拉松计划和中国制造2025实现了技术、制造业和内需的战略目标，并控制稀土、医药、原料等关键资源。美方特别批评欧洲的绿色能源政策，认为这实际上让中国获益，呼吁欧洲转向化石能源和核能。与川普合作实现再工业化，对话揭示了西方国家的深层焦虑对中国供应链的严重依赖。澳大利亚前官员以自身经历为例，指出中国曾因澳洲要求调查疫情而报复性抵制200亿美元的出口，证明建立替补供应链的必要性不是假设而是现实。但问题在于完全脱钩既不现实也代价高昂，美国无法在国内生产所有商品，这会让消费者承受巨大成本。印度代表印度甲亢姐尖锐地指出西方的双重标准，当自由贸易对西方有利时大力推崇全球化，现在亚洲国家和全球南方赶上来了，就开始抱怨不公平，加征关税，这反映了发展中国家对西方话语权的质疑。规则的制定者似乎总是根据自身利益调整游戏规则。美方代表强调 美国希望的是有能力的伙伴，而非附庸国，声称美国承担了维护世界秩序的沉重负担，却未得到应有认可。但这种辩护显得苍白，因为关税政策对北约盟友的质疑，对多边机构的轻视，都让盟友感到困惑。谁还算是美国的盟友？对话触及 WTO 等多边组织的尴尬处境。当各国单边加征关税，多边贸易规则还有约束力吗？澳方承认自由贸易虽能增加财富，但会改变国际秩序和造成国内痛苦调整，暗示纯粹的经济效率不是唯一考量。西方希望印度作为民主国家承担更多国际责任，成为自由世界的领袖，而不是在金砖国家中充当俄罗斯和中国的小伙伴。这反映了西方试图拉拢印度制衡中国的战略意图，但印度强调自己已通过联合国框架提供维和部队，让美国的单边军事干预形成对比。这场对话暴露了当前国际秩序的核心矛盾，既有霸权国家面对新兴力量崛起的焦虑，导致其在自由贸易和保护主义之间摇摆。多边主义让位于单边行动的小圈子联盟，发展中国家对西方话语霸权日益不满。真正的问题不是在中国的产业政策，而是如何在一个多极化世界中建立新的公平规则，让所有国家都能从全球化中获益而不是让少数国家永久占据价值链顶端。美国要求盟友分担负担，无可厚非，但单边主义和威胁性言辞只会削弱而非加强联盟。未来的世界秩序需要真正的多边协商，而非新冷战思维。谢谢大家观看，喜欢请点赞、评论加订阅哦，你的支持是我最大的动力。比心，明天见，拜拜，拜拜。